Developing aircraft requires huge expenditure. One company has on a number of occasions bet more than its entire net worth. This company's gambles paid off, and it went on to be an aviation giant. The company was Boeing. In 1952, the company developed a prototype transport plane. They invested $15 million, which well exceeded the company's net worth. If the plane failed, it would have sunk the company. The prototype was to become one of the greatest planes of the century, the Boeing 707. Although Boeing was well ahead technology-wise, their competitors were gaining ground with planes like the DC-8 and Convair 880. Boeing decided to raise the stakes and again took a massive risk with the expenditure of $100 million to build even better aircraft. To increase its market share, Boeing decided that customer service was an important issue. They customized the 707 for different clients. They made special long-range models for Qantas Airways of Australia, and they installed larger engines for Braniff's high-altitude South American routes. The cost of customizing was high, and every version of the 707 was a financial risk. Again, for Boeing, the risk paid dividends as sales of the 707 outstripped the DC-8. This would not be the last time Boeing took such a risk. They did a similar thing when deciding to build a plane that would be far superior to any other passenger aircraft in the world, the 747. During the late 1960s, approximately 50,000 Boeing employees went by the name of the Incredibles. These were the construction workers, mechanics, engineers, secretaries, and administrators who made aviation history. They built the largest civilian aeroplane in the world, the 747. They achieved this in less than 16 months. In the early 1960s, market research suggested that passenger growth would climb dramatically. Pan American Airways president Juan Trippe was especially interested in a plane for the future. He spoke of this interest with Boeing's president William Allen. The two signed a letter of intent to develop the 747. Trippe ordered 23 passenger and 2 freight versions of the aircraft, an order totaling $550 million. Regardless of the Pan Am order, building the plane was a huge financial risk for Boeing. It stretched both airframe and engine technology, and it required Pratt & Whitney, the engine supplier, to quickly develop a turbofan engine powerful and reliable enough to keep the mammoth-sized plane in flight. William E. Boeing was the company founder and owner. As the company grew, he remained as president and chairman of the board from 1916 to 1934. Under his guidance, a garage aeroplane manufacturing business went on to become a conglomerate of air and space-related industries. Boeing sold his interests in the Boeing Aeroplane Company to become one of America's most successful breeders of thoroughbred horses, although he never lost his interest in aviation. Boeing died in 1956. Even in its infancy, the company and William Allen personally gained many great achievements. One such achievement occurred in March 1919. Allen and pilot Eddie Hubbard made the first international airmail run when they flew postal deliveries from Seattle to Vancouver. Boeing built numerous models of aeroplanes, but one of the more interesting was the B-9 bomber, which had open cockpits. It could reach a speed of 186 miles per hour, and at that time it could outrun the fighters of the day by 5 miles per hour. Because fighters were expected to be faster than bombers, the B-9 also inspired the first monoplane fighters. It may interest many people to know that due to a lack of runways and airports, the first big passenger aircraft were mostly seaplanes. As air travel became more popular during the 1930s, one trip of Pan American Airlines asked Boeing for a long-range, 4-engine flying boat. Boeing developed the 314, nicknamed the Clipper, after the great sailing ships of the day. Clippers had large windows, dressing rooms, and a dining salon that could be turned into a lounge or bridal suite. The Clipper's 74 seats converted into 40 bunks for overnight travelers, and 4-star catered gourmet meals were served from its galley. Probably one of the greatest achievements of Boeing, which allowed it to become the giant it is today, was the development of the Dash 80. It was the prototype for the 707 passenger jet and the KC-135 jet tanker, and it became the first member of the 700 family of commercial and military jets. '72-year-old William Boeing came back to visit his former company for the rollout of the Model 367-80 on May 14, 1954 at the Renton, Washington plant. His wife Bertha christened the yellow and brown aeroplane with real champagne, and the Renton High School band played the Air Force theme. The Boeing company had invested $16 million to build this prototype for a long-range jet aircraft. It was developed over 2 years in secrecy, and it was designated as Model 367-80 to disguise it as merely an improved version of the Stratofreighter. When the Dash 80 was almost finished, Boeing took another big gamble. They tooled and geared up for a production aircraft, although neither the Air Force nor any airline had placed a single order. Because the prototype was constructed to sell first as a military tanker transport, it had few windows and no seats, but had 2 large cargo doors. A week after its first flight, the Air Force ordered 29 tanker versions, the KC-135. The commercial version, the 707, however, faced tough competition from the Douglas DC-8. Boeing salespeople directed their efforts to Pan American, Transworld Airlines, and large European airlines. On October 14, Pan Am ordered 20 707s. Disappointingly for Boeing, Pan Am also ordered 25 DC-8s on the same day. At about this time, the British had also been trying to get passenger jets into the sky with the de Havilland Comet, but they were experiencing problems. Regardless of this, interest was high in the Boeing product. The Dash 80 was a one-off research and development plane built purely to test the idea of a jet-powered transport. They designed a totally new plane. The wing retained the 35-degree sweep like the bombers. The wing flaps were split to avoid engine exhaust and turbulence. Over the course of its production run, the 707 would be modified into the greatest number of variations of any plane ever built. The 707 entered commercial service in 1958 when Pan Am flew it from New York to Paris in 8 hours and 41 minutes, twice as fast as any propeller plane of its day. Each of its 4 engines was able to produce 13,000 pounds of thrust. The production model 707 had a cruising speed of 575 miles an hour. This was 225 miles an hour faster than its nearest propeller-powered rival. With the 707, Boeing quickly took the lead in jet manufacturing. It was a year ahead of Douglas with its first jet, the DC-8. De Havilland's redesign of the Comet was released to the world a few weeks earlier than the 707. But the Comet could only accommodate about half the number of passengers as the 707. Over the years, the basic design of the 707 was preserved in many of the Boeing jets which followed. The standard fuselage width of the 707 is shared by the 727, the 737 and the 757. By the time its production run ended in 1991, over 1,000 Boeing 707s had been constructed. Boeing has always directed profits to research and development, and this eventually led them to work on space missions. One of the most important early achievements was building the Lunar Roving Vehicle, also known as the LRV, at the Kent, Washington facility in 1969. The first vehicle was delivered just 17 months after the contract was signed. Its appearance resembled a golf cart or a badly stripped-down dune buggy, but regardless of its appearance, it was an engineering marvel. The buggy-like vehicle travelled about 10 miles per hour, carried 4 times its own weight, and had woven wire mesh-like wheels to negotiate the strange lunar surface. More modern exploits of Boeing in the space arena include the 1993 NASA-Boeing contract for the International Space Station, which is the largest international space venture ever undertaken, both financially and physically. It's 2 football fields in size. The Boeing team is charged with design, development, physical and analytical integration, test, delivery and launch of all US elements, including the living quarters, the laboratory module and an airlock. Additionally, the Boeing company directs a national industry team comprising many major US aerospace companies and hundreds of smaller subcontractors. 16 countries are involved in the International Space Station. Aboard the Boeing-built US laboratory Destiny, crew conducts scientific studies in the unique conditions of microgravity, which is an environment that can't be duplicated on Earth. This uninterrupted access to space allows researchers to acquire large amounts of information to confirm new concepts and previously unobserved phenomena. Investigators make multiple experiment runs in succession, obtaining statistically significant results in a matter of weeks, even days, instead of years. The space station statistics are height 143 feet, length 290 feet, width 356 feet. Its weight 1 million pounds and a living and working space of more than 46,000 cubic feet. Amazingly, the Dash 80 remained in service with Boeing for 18 years as a test plane, and in 1972 it was retired and turned over to the National Air and Space Museum. It sat idle in the Arizona desert for 18 years. In May 1990, under an arrangement with the Smithsonian, Boeing returned the aeroplane to Seattle for a full restoration program. A crew was sent to the desert to ready the Dash 80 for its final flight. It was a painstaking task that took 15 technicians, 1,000 man-hours to bring the plane back to flying condition. But the desert had preserved the plane well, and the airframe remained in excellent condition. The Pratt & Whitney engines were fired up and tested, and when everybody was sure the Dash 80 was ready, the flight crew boarded and flew her to her birthplace in Seattle, where she was restored and made ready to begin a new life of service. A service of reminding future generations of our steps in achievement of flight. The last step in the restoration program was repainting Dash 80 in her original colours. This was the last time any test would be done on the aircraft. Fittingly, her paint job was a first in the world. It was a test of a new technique and procedure of painting aircraft. Dash 80 is considered by the Smithsonian as one of the 12 most important planes in the history of flight. It revolutionized air travel. The Dash 80 was the plane that tested many of the revolutions we as travelers enjoy today. The Dash 80 established the classic configuration for jetliners to come. It also set speed records nearly every time it flew. Its swept-back wing is used on nearly every plane today. The Dash 80 flew with a fifth engine mounted on the aft fuselage in a program to test the feasibility for a trijet 727. Dash 80 had 3 different types of engines installed at the same time. Dash 80 has approximately 3,000 hours of flight recorded in its logbook. Although it led to a revolution in air transportation, Dash 80 never entered commercial service itself. It was always a one-off development plane. However, the gift of Dash 80 is the birth of much larger, faster and smoother planes that quickly changed the face of international travel. Boeing didn't stop there. They replayed the success of the 707 with the development of the 747 or jumbo jet. Again, the company took a huge risk. The incentive for creating the giant 747 was the falling price of airfares due to competition and increasingly crowded skies. The idea behind the 747 was to move more people in one flight. Boeing had already developed the design concept and had the technology to create the 747 because the company had bid on, but lost, the contract for a gigantic military transport, the C-5A. The 747 was truly monumental in size, and to build, it required a truly monumentally large factory. The massive aeroplane required the construction of the 200 million cubic foot 747 assembly plant in Everett, Washington. This factory is still the largest factory in the world in terms of volume. The first plane was rolled out on September 30, 1968, less than 3 years after Pan Am had signed the letter of intent. Development costs to that time were said to exceed $1 billion, but that didn't include the cost of the world's largest factory. It wasn't smooth flying for Boeing. There were some problems. The prototype 747 was rolled out to an astonished crowd of workers, reporters, and airline executives. While everyone knew Boeing was working on a jumbo jet, no one was quite ready to accept the real size of the plane. The size was in fact the first problem. The first jumbo was overweight by 240,000 pounds. It was estimated in the design to weigh only 550,000 pounds. Regardless of the problems, Boeing worked through them with the same dedication that they had when building the plane. What Boeing had built was an aviation milestone and will probably go down in aviation history as the greatest commercial aircraft built in the last millennium. Join us again on our next search through our brief but fascinating history of flight and aviation. Come with us and meet the people, the planes, and the companies that have created the world's most technologically advanced machines.